It is our time, 10:30 UK time. So let's have another beautiful day. Let's
Mm.
start with a quick prayer. Master Jesus, spiritual friends, we are gathering here once more around Kardec's teachings about mediumship, mediums, and who we are. Give us the right intuition to talk, to share experiences, to ask about who we are, to better understand mediumship and how we can use it to help ourselves and others. Be with us today and always. So be it.
Okay.
So let me share with you guys the book. I'm assuming now you can see my book. And we continue with the subject, the hurling of objects.
Mm.
If such an individual unexpectedly appears, the spirit takes advantage of the opportunity. However, despite these favorable circumstances, it might still be prevented by a superior will who will not allow it to act as it wants, or it may be allowed only to act within certain limits in case where such manifestations may be considered useful, whether to serve as a means of conviction or as a trial for the person subjected to them. We had that conversation last week that everything has a limit and every phenomena needs to get a higher approval, otherwise unlikely to happen. The objectives of those phenomena could be many, as you see, but I personally believe is more like a wake-up call than anything else. Regarding the above matter, we will allude to a conversation arising from events that occurred in June 1860 in Noyer Street in Paris. Details of the incident can be found in the Revue Spirit, August 1860. To St. Louis, this is Kardec addressing St. Louis. Would you be so kind as to tell us if the events that are said to be occurring in Noyer Street are real or not? We have no doubt that it's quite possible for them to occur. Yes, the events are real, but popular imagination has exaggerated the facts, whether out of fear or mockery. Nonetheless, I will repeat that they are real. The manifestations are being caused by a spirit who is entertaining itself at the expense of the inhabitants of the place. Is there someone in the house who is the cause of the manifestation? Such manifestations are always caused by the presence of a disliked individual to whom the spirit attaches itself. The troublesome spirit is displeased with the inhabitant of the place and wants to make mischief or even make him move out. We would ask if it is someone amongst the inhabitants who is the cause of the phenomena due to the spontaneous or involuntary mediumship. That is always necessary, because if such is not the case, these incidents cannot happen. A spirit lives in a place of its own choosing. As long as there is no one there whom it can use, it remains inactive. But when such a person appears, it entertains itself as much as it can. That's why quite often we relate those phenomena to a person, because that when that person is not present, you don't have anything. The person just arrived, here we go, something happens. Is the presence of this person in the place itself indispensable? Normally, yes. And that is the case in this particular situation. He's referring to the case he was talking about in Noyers. That is why I said these incidents could not be happening otherwise. But I do not mean to generalize. There are, in fact, cases where the medium's presence in the place itself is not necessary. Since such spirits are of a lower order, is the aptitude for serving as the auxiliary unfavorable assumption about the individual? Does it indicate an affinity for beings of this nature? Not exactly, because this attitude results from a physical disposition. Nevertheless, it is almost always indicates a materialistic tendency that would preferably not exist, because the more morally evolved the person is, the more he or she attracts good spirits, who necessarily repel the evil ones. Let's just stop here a bit, because I think it deserves to us to speak about lower order spirits. Lower order spirits and evil ones. Many people relate lower order spirits to evil spirits. That's not the case. To make simple to understand, we are lower order spirits. The great majority of people on earth are low order spirits, meaning we are not that evolved morally. When we are evolved morally, we become high order spirits. But as you can see in our planet, there are not many. I think you agree with me. So we are all in a group that could be called low order spirits. Evil spirits are those who promote evil. The example that was given here in this topic is a spirit who's trying to have fun. He's trying to annoy someone in that place for a different reason, but he's not trying to do really evil. Basically, he's pleased because he's scaring someone. But that is not the description of evil. Evil is another degree of intention, another degree of spirit. So to make clear again, we are not evolved spirits. Hi, I have a hand. Go on.
Is there anywhere in the literature examples of what you would call morally evolved and evil spirits? For instance, someone who goes about their daily lives don't deliberately set out to do harm, but do not do, for instance, charity. They carry on living their own lives, sometimes a rather insular life. Would that be classed as not having achieved sort of moral standards?
Good question. Very good question. Let me answer first that yes, there are a lot of information, a lot of literature that we can access, especially for those that can speak Portuguese. I don't know if it's your case.
I do, yeah.
So in Brazil, you have, if not close, at least 1,000 books or more that you can have your whole life reading. So that is information available, and there's also information in English, in French, in German. That is right. In regards to not doing bad, not doing evil, if you're not doing good, you're not doing bad, right? That's what a lot of people think. I'm not a bad person because I'm not doing anything bad. But not doing good, you're already not doing very well, right? Doesn't matter what are your convictions, where you're coming from, your color, your country, doesn't matter where you're coming from. If you do good things in your life, you don't need any philosophy, you don't need any religion, you don't need anything. You, by your essence, you're helping people around you, people you don't know who they are, people you know who they are, is in your essence. So you don't need any title to tell that you're a good person or morally evolved, because that is in your heart, that is in your nature. On the other hand, we have a lot of people that are disguised in a religion, in a philosophy, or else. They speak a lot about that and they do nothing. So, which one is in a better position? The one that's helping, the one that's promoting good in the world, not the one that's preaching good in the world. Not doing bad does not mean you're good. Being in the inertia, you're producing nothing. So, if I could suggest, I would suggest us to go an extra leg, an extra mile to do good. I like to refer a lot to Jesus. Why? Because he's one of the reference of someone that passed through Earth. That's not like a believe or not. It's historically proven that he passed on Earth. There are registers. There are a lot of books. There are a lot of anything that could prove that he was on Earth, and he did good. He did good. Simple as that. We had others. We had in Asia, we had Buddha. In Brazil, we had Chico Xavier. We had many examples around the world that basically they drove their life doing good, right? That we cannot deny. So, regardless of what they preach or what they believe, they did good. So, those spirits are morally evolved compared to me, compared to majority of us. So that is what we call morally evolved. Hi, Charles.
Yes, I would just add that in Kardec, for instance, Kardec published in the both, I think, in the Spirit's book and in the Gospel According to Spiritism, the so-called spirit scale, which is describing the different categories of spirits and how we can recognize them. And this is exactly where we can find the explanation for this. For instance, a spirit who is throwing stones and willing a person to leave his home or whatever cannot be a good spirit. So it's quite obvious, but it's good to have this reference. And he also gave a description of the good person. What are the qualities to which we can recognize a good person here on Earth? So such reference is already included in the books of Kardec.
Indeed, Charles. Thank you for that. Yeah. And I always like to compare, to remind us that we are all spirits, incarnated or discarnated. We are not different than those that are not in the physical body anymore. We are spirits. So, how do we identify a good spirit, a good incarnated spirit, or a good person or a bad person? By their actions. Look at the fruit of the tree, and you know what kind of tree you have in front of you. You're not going to have apples if it's not an apple tree, right? So, very good comment, Charles. Thank you. Where does the spirit go in the search of objects to utilize? It is almost always finds these objects in the place itself or in the vicinity. A force that proceeds from the spirit flings then through the air and causes them to fall wherever he wishes. That explanation is very interesting because we had others, but that one gives us what we need to know. When we ask, it is always good to study the subject that we are attracted for. It's always good to compare answers. It's always good to compare the results of experiences. So that is something I always encourage everyone to do. Don't believe what is written in one book. Don't believe what is said by one person. Do your own research, do your evaluation, do some experiences to prove if it's 1 + 1 is 2 or not. So that is something that was encouraged by Kardec. Hi, Liz.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's about spirits that, maybe go into a kitchen and, smash the crockery or make, mugs and things fall out of the cupboards. But what would you classify as spirit? Because, we've got the law of gravity. So if, they use a force to get something out of a cupboard, it will smash on the floor. But what if a spirit takes an object that is breakable and puts it somewhere for you to find? How would you classify that spirit? And are they more likely to be somebody that that's passed on that wants attention or wants you to let them know that you're there, they're there, or are they more likely mischievous?
How to answer to that question, trying to use Kardec's information. High order spirits or high evolved spirits or serious spirits, they have no time to waste. They have a lot of things to do, helping people, work, basically. They have no time or interest to do anything like that. If we are in face of a spirit doing that, we know the answer already. He has a lot of time in his hand, at least, to be able to be engaging in such a thing, right? But I always encourage the person, everyone, to eliminate every single possibility before we attribute everything to the spirits, right? They do exist, they can do that, but we have to eliminate every possibility before we attribute everything to the spirits. But I am reluctant to say that the spirit is low order, a spirit is bad, because I'm not perfect. Who am I to judge those spirits? And perhaps one spirit that are throwing something in your home is not evil because he's throwing something in your home. He's throwing something in your home because you are very stubborn to realize who you are, and then that's a wake-up call. You only stop to listen to what you're being told or what is coming your way when you become scared. So the way to get your attention is to get you scared first. Because a doctor will not be able to explain why something is flying in your home. A mathematician will not be able to explain why something is flying around your home. So you end up trying to find people that you discredit for maybe a good part of your life because no one else can explain what is happening in your home. So you're knocking one spiritist or spiritualist home asking for what is going on. How many people come to us like that? This is what I call wake-up call. Actually, it's a gentle wake-up call. There are different types of wake-up calls. They are way more troublesome, right? But imagine if I'm talking to a scientist and when he's doing his project, things start to fly around his home. As a scientist, he has enough information to evaluate that something weird is going on here. I cannot explain. I'm going to speak maybe to a doctor. I'm going to speak to optician. Perhaps I'm seeing things that is physical to my eyes, or I can hear things, but maybe it's because I'm getting too old, almost senile. I will try to eliminate every single possibility. And when I cannot anymore, because I cannot find resonance with the doctors, with the specialists, with anything else, not even with my science, I start to consider something else. Because this flying thing in my home continues. Regardless of what people say that's not possible, I feel, I see, I hear, and things are still falling from my cupboard, for example. So that's the time when people start to realize that was something else. And then they to be a bit more open to receive that information.
I was thinking more on the lines of, we're just average people, and when you pass, you're just average people. And it's a means of showing that person who may have been close to you that life goes on, that they are okay, that they reach the other side. And also, of course, the great work is to wake people up, about the fact that who we really are, where we really come from. And this, could urge somebody to start doing more research. So it could actually be quite beneficial if it was that intention in the first place.
My experience shows something different, right? If someone close to me pass away, I hope they will not be around me, because that means if they are around me, means that they're not very well. Because look where we are. They have better things to do. They have a better place to go. They need to continue their lives. Sometimes those who remain on earth are attracting them. And we see that quite often too, because we be thinking about them, calling their names, hoping they will be here a little bit longer. And then we are attracting them. And then we are not helping them either. We are doing exactly the opposite. So when someone pass away, the best we can do is to do a prayer and wish go well. Because if you're not, we are not helping. We are doing exactly the opposite, right?
I have quite a few aunts on my mother's side, which is the mediumship side of the family, who all said, when they pass, they will make some sort of sign to let everyone know that life continues. And they did that. They kept that promise.
Okay. If you're happy with that explanation, what you believe, that's what matters,
Well, I actually still communicate with them. So, and I'm sure they still get on with their lives.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I wish I can communicate with them in our meetings.
Pardon?
I wish we can communicate with them in our meetings. Would be much better.
Yeah.
So, oh dear, I have two hands. But trying to wrap up the subject, I would not classify any incarnated or discarnated as evil, as low order, because in my assumption, we all are, well, we have a gap, but we are all not evolved sufficiently to call ourselves something else. So, hi, Roger.
Hi. A question. I would class myself as obviously low order, but sufficiently evolved that not be evil, that I would be forgiving of anybody. I wouldn't be throwing things around in that situation. I wouldn't be so bad. But if I were to suddenly find myself as a spirit attached in a home with certain individuals, I'll mention one name. I'll leave you to imagine who the other few might be. Adolf Hitler. You put me in a home with Adolf Hitler, then maybe I would be throwing things around. It would take me a good while to be forgiving. But much more recently, I went to Australia, as you know, and it took me quite a few days to come round to forgive my daughter's husband, who had deserted her, to actually be able to come round to talking to him. I did eventually, thanks to Lolita. She convinced me to be much more civil and be normal to him. He was the father of my grandchildren, and we eventually became sort of friends to a degree. So I think what might happen with Adolf Hitler eventually, I don't know.
Mhm.
But would you class that as being evil if I were throwing
No.
things around with Adolf Hitler for a while, a good while? I don't know.
No, I would classify that as a being human, right? When I say that we are all low order spirits, it's because where we are. If we were shining spirits, if you like, we would be in a better place, right? Evil is those who are committed murder, committing something atrocious in humanity. This is something that I would call evil. Things
Yeah,
like we go, all of us, through our lives, is being human. You
yeah.
know, sometimes I
I,
want to throw my son away. That's very human. I have 10, well, not to lie,
I,
at least 10 times a day.
I just can't imagine doing anything of that sort of order.
Exactly. Exactly. That's being human. That's very normal, right? But sometimes, because we've been preached for so long, evil, devil, we picture something that is a monster. We are not monsters. We are a group of people in a process to get better, right? Yes, there are those that are very late in the process, but I believe the majority of us on earth, we are through the process of getting better. Even those that believe they are very bad, sometimes they are not. They are scared, they are afraid, and we see that in our meetings. So, no,
Mm,
I think being human is part of the process. But being a smart human is almost an obligation, because when we don't have the information, when we never been acquainted to a knowledge, for example, given by those icons we had on earth, Jesus, Buddha, all the others, it's fine. We never heard about anything good. We have that excuse. I never heard about that. But from the time I've been introduced or I heard about the concept of what means to help humanity, to help my neighbors, to do well, I have no excuse. Then I decide not to hear, I decide not to do anything. That's totally fine for the person. But I strongly encourage people to help each other, to do something positive around
yeah,
around you. There are always someone around you that needs a help. Always.
yeah.
In
Help
your
your neighbor.
Yeah, in your home. You don't need to go outside from your home. In your home. You have wife, kids. One day that kid is in trouble, and let's pay attention to this. A neighbor, let's pay attention. Well, the neighbor is always smiling every morning. Good morning. How you doing, guys? Hi, Roger. And that particular day, pass through you in the corridor, not even a good morning. So you
Mm,
know already there's something wrong. Because every day until now was a good morning at least. So yes, sometimes, hey mate, how you doing? You all right? Ah, that was what the person was in need. Just someone to listen. That's doing good. And if we go a bit further, there's always someone that is in need of something else that's more hands-on as well. And
yeah. And
we
I jump at the chance when someone needs help.
that's it.
I'm there at the front of the queue.
That's it. That's it. You know. Of course, there are moments that we are not very proud of ourselves. You know, there are moments that we would prefer not to be part of, or we regret things we did. But that's part of the process. What is important is that you realize that doesn't matter my origin, doesn't matter what I believe, doing good is good. It's good for
Mm.
me, not for the others. It's good for me, you know? And yeah. Something came to my mind here. Actually came to my mind a little bit before. It came back again. This last week, we had a spirit who committed suicide, and he was brought to our meeting. He was in a very poor stage, very poor condition, very poor condition. He was yet attached to his physical body, his rotten physical body. He was there. We were able to move the spirit away from his body. And the next communication was also another spirit who did commit suicide, but long ago. And he was there trying to help this one. And he came to give an example. He's helping. He was trying to help someone who did exactly the same he did before. That's help. Is he an evolved spirit? I don't know. I don't care. He was there to help. You know, so how many opportunities we can help someone with our ears? Sometimes that's what the person needs, our ears. And then will not commit suicide. Because the great majority of people, they have no idea what happened, or they don't want to hear, or they don't want to know what happened if you do things like that to yourself, regardless what you're going to do for your family, but to yourself, the conditions you will be there. How many of them over these decades came to our meetings describing that they thought was the end, they thought that was it, so they would finish their suffering, and was exactly the opposite. The suffering was about to start. Another hand. Hi, Ina.
Hi, Guilherme and everyone else. Actually, your example now I think perfectly aligns with what I wanted to ask, because we read here that it depends on the person's moral involvement. So the better people attract better spirits. So I have example in a question. So there are people who we call lucky, who continuously get into some situations, but like get away with it. Like they're lucky coincidences. Something happens, something random happens that changes the course of a situation. Like I have one example of a person who's very active and she continuously gets into some situations and continuously is getting help, like very clearly she's getting help. So I wouldn't call this that the evil spirits are around her or the lower order spirits are around her, because the situation, well, takes some resolution. And I think it's not just, moving the object or scaring someone with a moving object on the table. So, and then I was laughing to myself, saying that, well, probably it's her spirit guide training other spirits to become guides, and then they all are like a team showing up for her and like helping her in all of the situations. But then you gave this example about the spirit who went through the similar situation and came back to help because, well, this is what their essence is. So it could be the same, right? When probably the spirit might not be the higher evolution, but they are ready to help. They want to help, and so they have the person who probably has like a better energy, better moral evolution on the earth. Could that be the case, or like what do we attribute to those people who have this lucky coincidence and like this luck? Okay, there is part of their luck, but there is also some spiritual help. Or
I will share a very personal opinion. And part of it is you can find resonance on the spiritism. There is no luck. There is no coincidence in life. There is no such a thing. There is a law, cause and effect. There are another one, resonances. If you do something good, you get something good in your way. You help someone when you need help, you will get help. When you help someone, you start to create an atmosphere around you that's positive. What is this atmosphere he's talking about? I'm talking about good spirits. If I do the opposite, I'll have the opposite. If I don't fulfill my mind with good things, I'll have the opposite. How many times we heard when we were kids, empty mind is the house of devil? Because it is. There's always intrusive thoughts that will come in our direction. So when you see that he's always lucky every time, look what he or she, I don't remember what he said, he does. Probably things you don't even know, helping people, not putting on the social media type of thing, but helping people, helping city, helping the nature. Good generates good. And that's coming your way. Sometimes we have to go through harsh experiences because it's part of our evolution, it's part of our learning processes. But that's also natural. But then after the process, the bad one, not a good one will come. And there isn't a single thing that I would call coincidence. There is no such a thing. We don't meet each other by chance. I'm not married to my wife by chance. I don't have my kids by chance. I don't have my work by chance. Nothing is by coincidence. But if you prefer to believe on that, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But then, can you explain to me what coincidence is? What's a coincidence? Something that happens without anything behind it. Something that has happened because, because happened. No. I want to know why is a coincidence. Because
No, Guilherme, sorry. No, when I said coincidence, I mean because most of my friends and my surrounding are not spiritists, right? And most of them are not even religious that much. So I understand that there are no coincidences, and looking at everything, it really feels more like a puzzle and the pieces come in places. But from the external perspective, when you look at it, it might seem like, oh my God, there's so many coincidences. Of course, coincidences don't exist. I also agree with you very much. Yeah, it's just more from switching from a common perspective to spiritual perspective.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. Let's imagine a universe with a lot of planets, stars, you name it, moving left, right, spinning. Nothing is a coincidence. You must have a very well planned thought behind that. Otherwise, we would be crashing planets left and right. For example, let's think about Earth. If we had a bit more energy in a different direction, perhaps you would not be able to sustain life here. If you didn't have that layer that protects us against the radiation from the cosmic, perhaps you would not have life as we understand here. Gravity. If you had a bit more gravity, you wouldn't be able to be here because life would be unsustainable. If you had a bit less gravity, you wouldn't be here either because life as we understand could not be here. So there's no coincidences. If you want to believe there is an architect behind all of this, fine. If you don't, it's fine as well. But then explain me how the universe is perfect. Because it is. How that perfection could exist without a plan. I have a very hard time to see that happening without a proper plan. So there's no coincidences. I like a lot when people talk about coincidence because I don't believe at all in coincidence, you know. And sometimes people don't even believe in spirits. And then we ask, do you think your thoughts is a byproduct of a chemical reaction in your brain? Oh, yes. Perfect. What about cases where, and we have that in the scientific literature, where people was having accidents and they lost 80%, 85% of their brain, and they still have 100% of the functions. Well, losing that much would definitely compromise you as a human being. You become more like a vegetable. But no, there are cases where it's there, you know. And science is moving slowly, but is moving to say that the thoughts are not generated in our brain. You can Google it. You can see many smart people talking about that. So one day, eventually, things like that will come more clearer. But we're not there yet. So,
Thank you for your response.
oh, cool. Hi, Olivia.
Hi. So, talking about coincidences, if there are no coincidences, let me give you an example. Action 1 happens, that then triggers action 2, that then triggers action 3, and the purpose of allowing action 3 to carry on is to enable the individual to learn through hard lessons that his actions have consequences. But then, in the process, the individual takes his life. Because there are no coincidences, are you saying that action 1, which was a completely, totally irrelevant event leading up to the suicide, are you saying that action 1 caused or contributed to the suicide? Because I find it really hard to live like that, thinking that, okay, if there are no coincidences, then an action that I might take with a view to get an individual to learn that one has to grow up, one has to stop certain destructive behaviors. So I allow things to, to happen, and then that person takes his life.
I'm going to start giving 2 examples,
Mm-hmm.
2 true examples, and then we take from there. We were in a spirit center, and someone came to our center, and a very unexperienced and irresponsible medium that was part of the group came to that person and said, well, you're not feeling very well, are you? And the person, of course, was not feeling very well. Yes, what do you mean? Do you see anything? And that person, irresponsible, said, yes, I can see a nasty spirit around you. We could see later that the person was really shaking and concerned. Luckily, we were able to repair the damage that was done. We came to the person, we explained to the person, and by the end of the night, the person went home well. We had to speak to that person in our group to remind her again that she should not act like she did. To start with, is lack of charity. And she could not foresee the consequences. And then I had to explain to that person that, what if that person came to the center asking for help, to ask for help, not to commit suicide, and because of the very unhappy comment of this particular medium, she left the center, and that was it. It never happened. That was one example. Second example, one gentleman came to the Spirit Center. We never met him before. His seat, one of the last layers of seats over there. And through the lecture, through the conversation, through the night, somehow he found what he was in need. That was his last attempt before commit suicide. He had decided to commit suicide, but he found answers in that particular night. So he's still with us, still alive. Why am I giving these two examples? There is no coincidence. We do have a tendency to believe that everything happens because it happens. No. In those two events, those two people were lucky enough, I don't like to use this word, they were lucky enough to find help. What if was exactly the opposite? To start with, those people on the path, or that person, they are engaging in something they don't have a clue what they are doing. Well, they commit suicide, yes, but you gave a little push. So we become responsible as well. Not for the act, but that little push in the right direction could help. That little push in the bad direction may push in a different direction too. Quite often, people that commit suicide, they commit suicide in a previous life. So they have the tendency to do that again. They are in a process to learn not to do it. And those that were around them, or they were in the path, are there to help. Of course, the person himself or herself has the main responsibility and the free will not to do. But sometimes they find help on the way. Let's hope that's always a positive help. The lack of knowledge of what happens when we die, the lack of knowledge of what happens if I do commit suicide, does not help. Does not help. But to those who have the possibility to participate on mediumship meetings, we see from time to time the consequences. And we go out there to help those spirits who come in a very bad shape. Everything in our life has a purpose. It's part of a learning curve. Nothing is a coincidence. How we take that on board is with us. Going back to the original question, yes, fact number one contributes with the fact number two. That contributes with fact number three. There is no coincidence. But the people that are involved in those facts, they can change the outcome.
What if action number one came out of the blue? Let's say an argument. You had an argument and you took an action. That action then resulted in a consequence, obviously, which then resulted in another consequence. But the intention behind action number two, not number one. Number one, let's say it was, a full-blown argument. Number two is, right, you got to go. You got to leave my house. That's it. You've been given lots of chances before, and you keep going back to highly destructive habits that are also impacting on the wider environment, i.e., the wider family. That person then leaves the environment and something tragic happens.
So
What I'm trying to ask you is, action number one, the person who instigated action number one, will that person have to live with the burden of the outcome, of the final outcome? Because otherwise, how do you take actions in life without feeling constantly guilty if something doesn't quite go to plan? Even when you believe that the action you're taking is for ultimately the improvement of that human being, because there's only so much that you can allow people to destroy your life with, pretty much. So how, maybe there isn't an answer here, but this is my primary question. Sometimes we say, okay, I love you very much, but I am just enabling you. Your behavior is not changing. Nothing is changing. In fact, it's getting considerably worse. And I saw something recently from Chico Xavier, which gave me quite some comfort. But then what you're saying, that nothing is coincidence.
I don't believe in coincidence.
You don't? Okay.
I don't believe in coincidence.
Right.
The law of cause and effect makes me not believe in coincidence. I think there are cases and cases.
Right.
We need to analyze all the facts, knowingly all the factors, to be able to give an answer more precise.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no coincidences, right? And imagine if everybody that encounter a problem in their life decide to commit suicide, because that's what we're talking about. That's assuming that, well, life as we believe, or the humanity today would be at least half there, because we all have problems every day. We all have problems every day. So that's no excuse to, oh, that's it. I had enough. Boom, it's gone. I had enough. Really? There is not a single fact that contributes to that point. There are several facts that may contribute to that end. Not knowing what is waiting for you is one of them. Believing that's the end is a mistake. Is a mistake. But life is a chain of events. Life is a chain of events. How you, I mean anyone in particular here, how you decide to drive your car is up to you. How many people pass exactly through the same situations and they're still here? Maybe if you decide to find the causes because you want to blame someone or you want to alleviate how guilty, it's not going to help you at all because it's done. But what we need to do is to understand that things can be prevented. If we are acquainted to the right degree of information, if we decide to call, because we don't need to talk about spiritism here. I can talk about the suicide helpline. Just call that line. They're there for that. And there are other things too.
Okay, thank you.
I have two hands. I don't know who went first. So I would choose Ina.
I just wanted to quickly add, because I think this, I mean, the example that, or the question that I asked and the question that Olivia asked, I think they are like two sides of the same coin, because there is the, like, and specifically when Olivia was saying action 1, action 2, action 3, I think you're not starting from the right point, because action 1 is actually the free will of the person who was given chances. So he was doing something, or they were doing something, and their actions is their free will. Like in my example, the free will of a person was to do something good. In an example that you gave, maybe the free will of that person wasn't that good. And so they were doing something. And then as a consequence, they had this argument. As a consequence, they were, I don't know, upset and then made this choice to end their life. But there is a free will, and there are these lessons which we have to pass through. And so our actions through these lessons, or our behavior through these lessons, that's what influences at the end how we react on things and what we learn. And examples, and the end story could be not so good, unfortunately.
We are speaking about something very generic here, right? Because there are cases and cases. There are cases of infants, there are cases of teenagers, there's a lot of cases, and we're being a bit generic here. But if we had the conception that we don't die with our physical body, our planet would be in a much better shape, because you know that we will come back. We wouldn't commit suicide because we know that it will not work. To be honest, that will make things worse. So that's a kind of thing that, unfortunately, yet there's a lot of gaps to have a general public information about this subject. Hi, Charles, you had your hands on.
Yes, basically you told what I wanted to tell as well. I mean, there is no coincidence, but everyone keeps its free will. And someone which is, for instance, saying something or writing something that could encourage other people to be misinformed and to take their life, the person who spread that false information has indeed part of the responsibility as well. Nevertheless, there is no fatality in committing a suicide. It's always a decision of our free will. We always have the possibility to resist, to say, no, I will not do it. And this is absolutely fundamental. Otherwise, the only case where this free will does not exist if you have a person which is mentally severely ill or something like this. The people who do not know what they do, of course, even if they commit suicide, they cannot be held for responsible because they do not do what they do. But in all the other cases, we always have the free will to say, no, I will not do it. And also make, this is why in Spiritism Body of Knowledge, we try to work as much as we can in the prevention of suicide, saying it's okay to ask for help. What are the signs showing that a person is at risk to do it, and how can we help, and so on. So this is really key in order to reduce the quantities of suicide, which are tremendous. I mean, it's 1 every 45 seconds or something like that in the world.
Charles, an example came to my mind here, and that I was part of it. I was in an 18-story building. I was on the 15th floor. I went to the window, well, more like a balcony there. I went to the balcony, and I heard, jump. Go on, jump. What? I could identify straight away that was an intrusive thought. That was not me, And later on, I decided to find out why that came like that. And there was one worker that suffered an accident, apparently from that floor, that he felt, and falling from a 15-story building, you know what's going to be left, right? So I am led to believe that was connected to this. So that was my free will saying, well, get off. That's not me. I'm not going to do it. Not a chance. What if I have decided, okay, I'll follow your instructions. Oh, I wouldn't be here today. That's a free will. That's a free will. We can always say no. We can always find something else. And what we see in our mediumship meetings, there isn't a single spirit who commits suicide that do not come to us in a massive regret, in a scenario in need of assistance. I'm going to finish here today. And that was not the subject of our study today, but never mind. It's always a positive topic to talk about. And I will pass now to Pablo.
So let's finish our study. Let's close our eyes and just ask our Father to grant us strength to overcome our obstacles and allowing us to have the knowledge, the comfort that comes from this doctrine to help us get through, move on, always seeking and knowing for truth that there is light ahead. So be it.
Thank you, everyone. Looking forward to see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.